Since I was a young child, there has been tension in our family, primarily regarding my cousin Sarah. My name is Emily, and I am the baby of the family. My brothers are twins, Mark and David, and I always felt that our father, Robert, cared more about Sarah than he did about us. It may sound childish, but it turns out that she was his secret love child and had a secret college fund saved for her. But it's difficult to grow up feeling inferior, especially when the person you're being compared to isn't that special. Sarah is a year younger than me and the only child of my Uncle Tom and Aunt Lisa, so it's obvious that they adore her. Thus, issue was that my dad, Robert, seemed to love Sarah so much that he would buy her anything she wanted and give her a ton of attention, but it always felt like he put her needs before his own, which made Mark, David, and me feel as though we weren't important to him since we were young children. Sarah and I began attending the same school the same year, and both my dad and my uncle insisted that we spend as much time as possible together. It felt strange every morning when Dad made me get up early and drive to Uncle Tom's house to pick up Sarah, after which Dad would take us both to school. I didn't understand why she couldn't just take the school bus like other children if it was I could have slept in longer, but every time I asked Dad about it, he would tell me to stop being so difficult and to think of Sarah as my sister. This made me feel like I should just follow his wishes at school and that my feelings weren't relevant. Sarah always wanted me to play with her and be with her all the time. She was a quiet child who didn't have many friends, and I enjoyed hanging out with my friends, so Sarah didn't like that after school, when Dad, Uncle Tom, and Aunt Lisa never seemed to see anything wrong with any of this. My dad and Uncle Tom have always been close. They're only a few years apart, and they grew up doing everything together. Uncle Tom was the older one, so he taught Dad many things, especially how to ride a bike. She would always tell me if I hadn't spent lunch with her dad, and he would get upset with me and say I should be nicer to my little sister. I just rolled my eyes. They needed each other to fix things on the car because their dad wasn't around much. That's why they wanted our families to be together all the time. Initially, my brothers told me that Mom didn't particularly enjoy spending so much time with Uncle Tom and Aunt Lisa, but she had no choice because they were always visiting our house. When Mom tried to discuss it with Dad, he would dismiss her, saying that family should be close and that he enjoyed spending time with his. I believe that some people just don't connect, and that's how it was with Mom and Aunt Lisa. Mom didn't mind Dad hanging out with Uncle Tom, but she felt that she had to be friendly with Aunt Lisa too because she was always around. This was understandable because Aunt Lisa and my Uncle Tom had a different type of marriage back then, where both of them were free to flirt and have relationships with anyone my aunt would tell. The details of my mother's encounters caused her a great deal of discomfort. She always told us that it was improper to have such conversations around children, as my brothers informed me. For this reason, whenever my aunt and uncle came to visit, she made them go outside and play with other children. My dad never seemed to mind my uncle and aunt's marriage, and he would laugh when he heard about their interactions. The year Mom was expecting me, Lisa told her she wanted a baby too, but she and Uncle Tom were having problems and the doctors said they might not be able to have children. This made them very unhappy, and after much argument, they decided to get married differently so they could see other people but still be together. However, Lisa told Mom she still really wanted a baby, and Mom advised her to consider other options like adopting or trying expensive treatments. But Mom said they could find a way if they truly wanted a family when Mom died from excessive blood loss when I was born, and my brothers told me how difficult it was. They were happy that I was born healthy, just as Mom would have wanted, but Dad was devastated and wouldn't leave Mom's side because he couldn't believe she was gone. I can't even begin to imagine how much that hurt him, but he never blamed me. I wish Mom were here even though I never met her. My brothers have all these stories about her, and I only have photos from the first year after I was born. I don't remember my brothers ever fighting with me when I was growing up. I was like their little buddy, and they'd let me watch them play. Video games sitting right next to them. They never argued with me about food, and if I wanted the biggest piece of pizza, I always got it. It was difficult for Dad and my brothers because they weren't used to caring for a baby girl, but Dad stepped up and my brothers helped him. I know some brothers can be cruel, but mine are very sweet and treat me like I'm special. My friends would tell me stories about their siblings fighting, but I never experienced that. My brothers are calm and don't get angry easily. The biggest argument we ever had was over what movie to watch, and we simply decided to vote. We've always gotten along, and I feel fortunate to have such nice, kind brothers after Mom passed away. Uncle Tom and Aunt Lisa and Uncle Tom were close, and when Sarah was born, we spent a lot of time together. At first, it was fine, but when you're forced to be with someone all the time, it gets old quickly. When I started school, I made my friends, and I would rather not spend every minute with Sarah, but everyone was happy when Aunt Lisa got pregnant just a year after I was born because they knew how much Aunt Lisa and Uncle Tom had wanted a baby. Sarah was a bit of a crier and could be very dramatic. Since she had no siblings, she didn't know how to share and was always very protective of her belongings. Uncle Tom and Aunt Lisa never really told her to stop, so she acted that way at school as well. If she disagreed with a classmate, she would argue with them and throw herself on the floor. Kids don't like that, so they stopped the behavior. Because I had to spend so much time with Sarah, I started to lose my temper with her. She wasn't easy to be around. If she wanted to watch a certain TV show, we had to watch it even if I didn't like it. Or if she wanted to eat at a certain restaurant, I had to agree even if I didn't want to. Or she would have a tantrum. When she complained to her parents, they would blame the teacher or the other kids instead of talking to Sarah about how she was acting. Sarah had this annoying habit of flirting with the guys I liked, and if she saw me talking to a boy, she would come up and introduce herself as my sister, saying how close we were at the time. One day, I was going to a birthday party, but the invitation was only for me and my dad. My aunt cornered us and said I was being selfish by not wanting to bring my cousin with me. I was starting to argue with my dad a lot because I was tired of being around her all the time. I had a crush on a boy named Ethan, and we were getting close after school. One day, Sarah saw us together and marched straight over, saying, "Hello, I'm Sarah, Emily's sister." She put her arm around me in a completely fake way and began telling Ethan about how I had once unintentionally worn my pajamas to school because I was so sleepy. Ethan looked uncomfortable, and I was mortified. When my brother graduated from high school, they knew that his father didn't have a lot of money saved for college, so they both worked hard to get scholarships. They still had to take out loans to pay for everything. I knew that I had to do the same thing, which was to get good grades and get into a good school, so I spent the last 2 years of high school studying a lot and not hanging out with my friends as much. I glared at Sarah, and she just smirked back at me like she had won some sort of game. Sarah kept telling me to have fun and live a little, even showing up at the library while I was studying and insisting that I leave with her to go to a party. I told her firmly that I had to study and that she needed to respect my priorities, and she rolled her eyes and called me a goody two-shoes before storming off in a huff. She would text me and call me wanting to hang out, but I would ignore her and tell her that I was wasting my time. A mixture of frustration and a small amount of guilt, even though I knew I was doing the right thing. After I graduated, I was accepted to 2 excellent universities, and I had to choose between them. Sarah was so excited that she kept talking about how we would live together, go to classes together, and have a great time that it made me cringe. I liked Sarah, but I would rather not spend my entire college career stuck with her. I told Dad that it was my life and my choice, and he was disappointed that I was choosing a different university just because I would rather not be with Sarah. He said that having a sibling like Sarah was a great thing, which infuriated me. I told him that I did have siblings, my brothers, and I love them. I didn't even discuss my decision with my father because I had a scholarship, and I was the one taking out the loan. Uncle Tom and Aunt Lisa were also upset when I asked him to stop trying to force me to be with Sarah, saying that I was an adult now and that I needed to make my own decisions. They called me and said that Sarah had been excited to live with me and that it would have made college much easier for her, but I didn't care. I was happy with my decision. On the day I was packing my things and getting ready to move into the dorm, I heard Aunt Lisa's car pull up. Since my brothers had moved out, she would come over to visit Dad or cook for us, but this time I was at home. So I locked myself in my room and kept quiet in the hopes that Dad wouldn't call me downstairs. I could hear them talking and laughing, so I became curious and peeped out of my room like any other child would to hear what they were saying. When Dad mentioned something about a college fund, I became interested, so I crept downstairs to hear more. Dad told Aunt Lisa that he had been saving money for Sarah's college for a long time and that she would never need to take out a loan because he had everything taken care of. I was just stunned to hear this because my dad had never mentioned college to either my brothers or me. I felt hurt. Why would he do that for Sarah's school and not even discuss it with me, let alone consider how I would pay for college? I went back upstairs and called my brothers to ask. They asked me if I was certain of what I had heard, and I told them that I was. The 3 of us tried to figure out why Dad would do that, but we were unable to do so. Then, it suddenly occurred to me that I could ask my brothers anything, so I asked, "Do you think Sarah is Dad's daughter?" My brothers were silent, and David responded that it was impossible, but Mark remained silent for a longer period when David asked him what he thought Mark had said. We knew that something about the way Dad acted with Sarah had always baffled us, so I decided I was going to find out the truth. My brothers asked me how I told them I was going to get some of Sarah's hair covertly and get a DNA test. Mark said that there was no other reason why Dad would be so close to his brother's daughter. Sarah looked a little like us with our dark brown hair from Dad, not like Uncle Tom's blonde hair. When I asked Sarah to hang out, Some of her hair fell on her jacket without her knowing. I felt bad, like I was doing something wrong, but I had to know the truth. Waiting for the DNA test was terrible, and I kept hoping I was wrong because I didn't know what I'd do if Sarah was my dad's daughter. If she wasn't, then fine, we were wrong. But if she was, then we needed to know. Mark and David didn't want to, but they agreed and told me to be careful so no one else would find out. It felt like the world was spinning when I finally received the results of the DNA test, which revealed that Sarah was my sister and that we shared a father. I was confused, angry, and sad all at once because I couldn't believe Dad had kept this a secret from us for so long, knowing that Sarah was my half-sister and not my cousin. It was too much to process, and I needed time to process it. I felt like Dad had lied to us, and I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. The idea that Sarah was born only a year after I meant that Dad had been with his brother's wife within a year of Mom's death made me feel sick, but now that I've thought about it, everything makes sense. I called my brothers in tears, and they knew immediately that something was wrong. I told them that Sarah was our half-sister, and they were silent for a short while. I sent them pictures of the DNA test so they could see Mark and David were enraged and wanted to go home immediately to confront their father about what had happened. But I knew that nothing we could say would change the fact that he had slept with his brother's wife, and she became pregnant. Instead, I suggested that we stop talking to him because he had done nothing for us and had allowed us to figure out how to pay for college by taking out loans while he saved money for the child he had with someone else. Mark agreed with me that David was. I asked my brothers not to tell Dad anything yet, but I asked them to come on the day I was leaving for college to drive me because I didn't want to go with Dad. They immediately agreed, so on the day I was leaving for college, I asked Sarah to come over and say goodbye. When she arrived, Dad was acting pleased, and I decided that, even though we were still in shock, we could at least do something to reveal the truth. I scoffed inside and rolled, my eyes in my head, knowing exactly where that money came from. Sarah continued to discuss how wonderful it was that her mom had saved thousands of dollars so she wouldn't have to worry about loans like I did. He gave her a big hug, as he always did around her, and she told me about her plans to move into an apartment and how her mom had just told her about this college fund that had been secretly set up for her years ago. I bit my tongue, trying not to say anything. Anything my brother said when Mark and David pulled into the driveway. They didn't even properly greet Dad. You could sense the tension. Dad tried to speak to them, but they ignored him. This was different for us because we had always respected Dad. But after learning this secret, we were unable to even look at him. Basically, I assisted them while they loaded my belongings into the car. And once everything was loaded, I turned to he reached out to hug me, but I stepped back so he couldn't. He asked if something was wrong, and I looked him in the eye and said, "I wish Mom were here." He looked hurt and confused, but I didn't care because of the kind of secret he had kept from us. I wanted to scream and yell at him, but I restrained myself. I said goodbye to Sarah and gave her an envelope, telling her to open it in front of Dad. After I drove away, she nodded as if she understood. As we drove away, I knew that this was going to cause many problems in our family, but as a backup plan, I sent Uncle Tom a picture of the DNA results so he wouldn't be in the dark. As I had anticipated, within 30 minutes, my phone began ringing nonstop, and my brothers began receiving calls from Aunt Lisa and Dad, who were trying to call us to explain Elle, but they never answered. Then Uncle Tom called. Uncle Tom took a deep breath and then asked me if I was okay. I could tell by his voice that he was distressed, and that's when I started crying. Uncle Tom had always been important to us, and I hated being the one to tell him. I decided to answer because I knew how shocked he must be. He asked me directly if the test was fake. I felt this wave of emotion and told him I wished it was fake. I told him how much this news had hurt me and my brother, and how it changed everything. We thought about our dad. Now that I'm in college and my brothers are gone, I've had time to reflect on how much this has changed our family. It feels like I did something wrong, and I'm afraid of what's going to happen to us. Am I the bad guy for telling my cousin the truth? Did I do the right thing? Update 1. Although he was hurting too, Uncle Tom was still kind and asked how I was doing. He reassured me that I hadn't done anything wrong and thanked me for telling him the truth. My family has been in complete disarray since the truth was revealed. I found out that Sarah and Uncle Tom left their home quickly and didn't want to interact with Aunt Lisa. Since then, Aunt Lisa has been sending me a ton of nasty texts, some of which accuse me of various things, while others attempt to make it seem as though her affair with my dad was somehow acceptable. In one message, she even claimed that I was the one who ended the relationship. My mom would be disappointed in me for trying to harm everyone and destroy the family. She wrote in her marriage that I am responsible. As for my dad, Robert, he hasn't spoken a word since that day and hasn't called or texted, but that's okay with me because I know there is nothing he could say that would make me forgive him. Thank you to everyone who has said anything. I appreciate it. I know deep down that telling the truth was the right thing to do, but I still feel terrible guilt. Even though it's clear that my dad had an affair with her mother, I will never consider Sarah to be my half-sister. She will always be my cousin, which doesn't mean I don't like her. I was just created to take care of her and play with her, and perhaps that made me a little resentful of her. I never wanted to cause so much pain in my family, but the truth had to come out sometime, no matter how much it hurt. Some of you have different ideas about why I stopped talking to my dad, Robert, and some of you want me to hear his side of the story. However, I wonder if you would be okay with your parents sleeping with their brother's or sister's husband or wife and having a child, then keeping it a secret for years and forcing you to be friends with your cousin so they could see the child without anyone knowing. I hope she's happy and that she can move past all of this. Update 3. Uncle Tom and Sarah came to visit me at college. I was apprehensive about meeting them, but Uncle Tom gave me a warm hug as soon as he saw me, which helped me feel a little better. Sarah and I said hello politely, but it was a little awkward. We sat down to talk, and Uncle Tom informed me that he had stopped all contact with my dad since that day, which was heartbreaking to hear. Uncle Tom then informed me that he was going to be divorcing Aunt Lisa. He asked if she had contacted me, and when I showed him some of the messages she had been sending, he became very irate. He took pictures of the messages and said that he and his lawyer would handle it. I was surprised that Uncle Tom already had a divorce lawyer, but I wasn't surprised given the affair my dad had with his wife. The conversation was difficult, but it also felt like a sort of ending knowing that Uncle Tom had decided for himself. Sarah then asked how I was doing in college. I told her that I was doing fine. She asked if I already knew that the college fund her mother had mentioned had been set up by my dad for her. I nodded and told her that I had overheard the conversation that evening that her mother had come over alone to talk to my dad, which is what initially made me suspicious of them. Tom explained that he couldn't stay with her after she had betrayed him in that way. I told Sarah that she had done the right thing, especially since my dad hadn't even acknowledged that he was mistaken. Uncle Tom made a face, obviously still furious, and told me how the night he found out everything, he had driven to my dad's house ready to hit him, but Sarah stopped him. She gave all of that money back to my dad and asked him to never contact her again. She said she thought their entire affair was extremely strange and unsettling, and she couldn't accept anyone else as her father. He didn't do it because he loved her so much. Otherwise, he claimed, my dad would be dead. I could appreciate how upsetting it must have been for him to have raised his daughter for so long, only to learn that his brother had betrayed his wife. After speaking with Sarah and Uncle Tom, I feel much better about my decision to cut off contact with my father. As for my brothers and me, we're all doing well. Family, and we always support one another. I speak with them frequently, and we intend to get jobs in the same area in the future so that we can all live there, collectively.